everybody, my name's Cathy Disbrow of Woolly Doodles. Today I want to show you how to create a basic bird shape. In this video it's meant to be for very beginner people who are just getting started in needle felting, and maybe you've made a tomato or a pumpkin and you want to move on and create something a little bit more detailed. So what I'm going to show you in this video is how to create the core shape using a skewer. Then I'm going to show you a knot technique on how to create a rounded shape, and then we're going to attach that to the body, and I'll show you how to use some wool to create seams, to get rid of, to get the shape the way we want it, right? So I'll show you how to do that. Then I'll show you how to add a top coat color to your bird, in this case red, yellow. I'll do a blue bird. And then I'm going to show you how to create the wing shape, the tail shape, how to add it on and just smooth it out with using some wool just to cover that over. And then I'll show you how to make eyes and a beak and attach those. I also will do a quick demo on how to do glass eyes for those of you who maybe don't want to worry about creating your own bird eyes. And so these birds are great. I didn't add feet or legs. You could string these up as ornaments or to hang them around. I see a lot of people like baby mobiles, so I will show you how to string it up if you want to do that. You could always create your own legs and feet. I'm not going to be showing that in this video. If you want to make your bird more realistic, you could also, once you learn the basic techniques in this video, you can go to Google and check out all different kinds of bird photos and just kind of follow along. If they've got black wings, like say American goldfinch, you can add the detailing based on the photos. Again, I'm not going into that in this video, but this is just a great start to get you moving forward. The other thing is I do have a nest do-it-yourself kit that does have a video. The video is not available for free. You do have to purchase the kit to have the video, but it will show you how to build a nest that you can then put your little birdies in. So without any more delay, why don't we go ahead and get started? Okay, so here's what the birds look like a little closer up, and just to give you an idea of the shape, it's really just basic. You can see how I was able to just recreate to the same shapes. Nothing's exactly the same. In fact, when I made this one, it got a little bit, it got just a little bit wide at the back here. I was trying to keep it, I don't know if you could see, I was trying to keep it a little bit more tapered at the bottom. I could still work with this. I just wanted to show you that what it will look like once we start working on it. And so what we're going to do is I'll just put all my birdies aside. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you, I'm using what's called core roping. It could be called chunky core roving. This is core wool. I talk about core wool in my beginners video. So if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see a needle felting 101 basics of needle felting video. I talk a bit more about core wool roving versus batting. And in the case of this, you want some sort of batting core wool. They call it core wool because they have washed it and carded it. A lot of times I like it where it's all the different fibers all crisscrossed together. A lot of times if you get roving, when they talk about it, it's all like real stringy. It's all the fibers are going in one direction. So technically, if this is called roving, that's what they've done. But if you pull it open, you can see how it's definitely more like a batting. And what'll happen is all these little fibers will connect together better. So I will talk a little bit about basic measurement. If you have a giant sheet of wool, say like you bought it and it's like a big giant thing like this, right? You could pull strips off of that. So what I'm working with here is about 2 inches wide When I start pulling on it right now, it's about, like if I squish it, it's going to be about 1/4 of an inch. Thick, could be 1/2 inch. But as I said, when I show you this, so what I do is I will pull this in half. I want to work with small strips of wool, right? So if you do have something like this where it's roping, I do pull it in half, and I will pull it in half again, just so I have more control over what I'm doing. So working with smaller strips of wool. And as you can see, not all strips are created equal when you pull it apart. So what I'll do is I'll put this one aside and use that a little bit later. I'll take the thickest of the pieces that I created. So now what I'm working with is it would say it's approximately about 1/2 inch wide, and about a 1/4 of an inch thick. If I do this, you could see it spreads the wool out a little bit, right? So I wouldn't worry too much about how thick it is. I just wanted to give you an idea if you were pulling strips off. I oftentimes will measure from my palm to my elbow. That's about 12 inches. I just happen to have a piece sitting out based on my measure. It's probably somewhere around 8 inches. Again, this isn't like an end-all be-all. If it's a little bit longer, right, you could just keep going up and down the skewer. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So I just have a basic skewer, your standard bought at the dollar store or the food store, you know, and I know it's, did you really want 100 of them if you just want one? But maybe you have a friend that has some skewers. Oftentimes, if I sell supply packs or kits, and it requires that in the do-it-yourself, then I will usually include one in that. If you live near Burlington, Ontario, just give me a shout, and I can just give you one for free. Okay, so the bird shape is approximately the shape that I made is around 5 inches. So for me, the measurement would be the palm of my hand, right? So the head would sit here, and the part, just forget about the tail right now, but the shape, right? So the shape here, right? So the idea would be is that it would fit in my palm of my hand, right? Again, I'm used that a lot of times for measurements. I don't have a ruler with me, but I will, in the description, I will put the exact dimensions of the bird that I create. Right, so this is a good, easy way of measuring. So a lot of times what you could do is, knowing that that's your size, or if you actually have a ruler and size that out, I will oftentimes, if you're going to make more than one, will draw a line on each end to know where that would be. Mine's chewed up a bit, so I'm just going to say that this is where I'm just going to wrap up to here. Right. But you could mark that if you have a pencil or a Sharpie. Right, I'm moving this bird out of the way. Okay, so I'm going to start down here. So I'm going to hold my finger down at the base, and then I'm just going to, with my finger, hold down that thin piece. Now I want to start, I'm going to go up the skewer and back down, but to start, see how it's not an even, it like gets to the width here, but not here. So I will just wrap that around. I'll just go, it was about 4 times, right? So now that I have it, it's even. So as I go up the skewer to about this point, right, it's going to be even. So now I'm just going to keep it wide and ribbon-like, right? And I'm going to angle it up as I go up the skewer. I never worked this slow. I'm finding it a little hard to go this slow. So this is about the point where I was choosing, right? So I'm just going to come up, and then I'm going to go around once and then angle it back down again. And then I'm just going to come to the bottom of the skewer. Now I'm pulling this very tight, and I don't know, you could watch the video over and over. I often take my hand, and I'm always keeping it wide and ribbon-like, but I'm always giving it tugs as I bring it around the base, right? So because I wrapped it so tight, it's not unraveling, but I still need to give it some stabs. People often ask me what needle do I use. I start with the 36 triangle felting needle, but I'm finding that I wrap this really tight, that's not working, so I'm going to a 38 star. These are the needles of my preference. The 38 star equivalent could be a 40 triangle. Oftentimes, if you shop at a fiber store and they have like coarse needle, medium needle, fine needle, the fine needle is usually a 40 triangle. There will be, I am recording a video right now about needles. What needle do I have? Talk about the different kinds of needles. So keep your eye out for that video. All right, so what I do is I will give a stab at the top. Right, so I want to make sure that this won't unravel on this end, and I give it a stab at the base. Now I'm being very careful. See how far away my hand is? So I'm just giving it some gentle stabs. I'm not going crazy. I've wrapped this tight enough. If you do this and it shifts, like it starts to really slide off, you haven't wrapped it tight enough. If you start touching it and it's like this, it's not tight enough at all. Like you really need to make sure that when you're wrapping it, that you're pulling on it as you wrap around. Now let's see how good I was. Oh, that's pretty close, right? Let's measure that with my hand. Obviously, it's a little thin down here, so what I'm going to do is when I start, I will give it a couple extra wraps. So I'm using another piece that I pre-measured out. Again, all these strips were approximately the same size. So again, see how I'm holding my hand so it doesn't slide down. And the idea is I want to get like a pointed shape. So I'm not going to come back up all the way up to this point again, right? I want to create this, it's not going to be a cone shape, but it's going to be similar to a cone shape. And if it doesn't round out here, I have added a chest onto the bird, so I will show you how to do that. So I've wrapped it around to get it even. I also filled that in so it's now about the same thickness, and I'm going to angle it back up again and see how I came almost to the point, but I'm not, and in this time I came up, and then as I came around I just angling it back down again. I'm just going to create this basic shape. If you have way too much wool, say you pulled too much wool and you don't need it, and you're worried that if you start angling, like you came around the bottom and you started to angle it back up again and you would forget where you were, what you can do is you can just pull off that excess wool, right? You don't need to use it all if you find it's going to get your project a bit out of control. So if you get to the bottom and you wrapped it around and you're worried about wrapping it back up again, what I would just recommend is either you spin it around, like see now it's going to create more of a bulbous and it won't be even, just pull it off. So when you pull off wool, what I would recommend is just giving a few stabs on your shape while it's on the skewer. Then you hold your finger, pinch it where you want to pull it, and you just pull it off. This is batting, right? So this is the properties of wool batting. If you were confident and were able to keep going up again and do that, that's fine. Just remember where you left off. We're all beginners at some point. Okay, so again, I'm just making sure, is my shape staying about right, in the measurement? Am I creeping over on the one side? I seem to be doing okay. So again, I don't need to worry about stabbing the top here, but I will give a few jabs along it just to make sure that things won't start to unravel. And what I'm doing now is I'm starting to connect those fibers I just wrapped around into the fibers that I wrapped around first. Again, I was mentioning core wool sometimes has vegetation. You just gently pull that off. It won't matter too much at this point because we're going to add some more wool onto this. But for now, just going to do this. Okay, see how it's a little wonky here? It's not very even. So what I tend to do with those pieces is I just pull a small strip. So here's a little strip that I pulled off of that excess wool. I tend to do this where I twist the end so I can grab it easier. This is just something I do. You don't have to do that. But you see how it has a loose end? A lot of times I'll just twist one end so that I can hold it better. And I'm just going to give it a light wrap around there so that that evened up that little divot that was created when I didn't go all the way back up again. So there's always ways of fixing your projects. Okay. So again, the thickness that I'm going for is, it's going to be, I thought I wrote this down. It's going to be about an inch. I'm going to measure this little guy. So it's going to be somewhere around an inch and a half on this end, and then it'll taper down to probably about a quarter of an inch to the bottom. Oh, oops. Okay, so again, I'm going to start down here. And really, honestly, this is just going to be, you're going to create your bird. Yeah, so see how I'm wrapping this, and the piece is really big, so when I come up here, it might bulk it up too much. So you could go ahead and thin that out a bit if you think your piece is a little too thick. Right. This is, again, you'll get used to this. If you think you have too much, don't force yourself to use it, right? Just work with it. You'll get used to using wool. Now, if I had pulled longer pieces, right? So remember I said I did like 8-inch pieces. If I had done bigger, if I had done wider pieces, right, or sorry, longer pieces, then I would have probably been able to go up and then back down. What I find though is eventually I just can't, right, it gets too thick that I just can't go back up and down again, right? So again, I'll hold the little thin piece in case I have another correction to make. You can see, like, I know this seems like it takes longer, but I find slow and steady doing it this way. You get a more accuracy on your piece. Your projects, you'll be hopefully a little happier with the outcome because you have a little more control over the sculpting part of needle felting. Okay, so can you see, like, now I do want to even this out a bit. I don't really want any more wool. I'll just work on creating this part. I'm getting to that where it's going to be about, it's getting pretty close in the shape. I just want to even out up here a little bit. So I'm just adding a thin piece, and I won't go back up there again, and I'm just going to wrap a little bit over here. So I wound up using one 8-inch by 8-inch long by 2 inches wide piece. I used most of it on this project. Sorry, to make the base of the project. So yeah, so now I just took some of what I had left over, and I'm just adding that on just to build up the bulk, right? So as you saw, I just wrapped it around, and I'm just now sculpting stabbing it along the needle. When you're stabbing it on the needle, sorry, when you're stabbing it on the skewer, ooh, I'm using a needle. When you're stabbing it on the skewer, you just want to be careful. You don't want to keep hitting that. Now, if it's wood, your needle shouldn't break unless you hit it really hard. But you do want to try to just stab that on the side. When we pull, like when I slide this off the skewer, you're going to see, we'll work on it a little more just to make sure that it's firm enough, right, to start adding other pieces to it. So before I take it off, I do again make sure I stab here, all the way around here, and see how it's getting rounded just by me stabbing it in this direction, like so I'm stabbing it a bit on an angle. So it's starting to round a little bit up here at the top. We can work on that, or you could work on that if you find that it's not doing that. You can add some more wool onto that. I'm not too worried about the base of where my tail is. So I'm just going to slide this off now. You've probably been watching and seeing that I've got a little splintering going on there. So I usually push on here. So I'm just pushing it. And if it starts unraveling, stop. And as you have it on the skewer, really give it some stabs before you're pushing it off. Because if it starts unraveling, that means that your base was a little too loose. It wasn't quite connected on there. So you've probably been finding this irritating, this little piece of black wool. I just pulled it off. I oftentimes use a tweezer to pull off wool like that, or to get little bits out, and that's mainly because I don't want to like pull my whole project apart. All right, so now this is where I start to inspect it. I feel it's a little, like the wool's a little loose here, so I'm just going to give that some stabs. Now that it's off the skewer, I'll use a multi-tool. So right here I'm using this is the Clover pen tool. It usually has 3 needles in it, but I like to work with 2. The needles in here are 40 triangles. They're considered fine needles. And they work really, really well. I find a tool like this, the 5 needle punch tool, it's a little too much for this part. I like to use it more when I'm smoothing out, say, the wool on my project, once I add the top coat color on. But yeah, you can use I've seen wooden tools where you could have a few needles in. They'll work fine as well. Just make sure you're careful about where the spacing is on those. Because if they're too close together, you might find that it's harder to stab into the piece you've already sculpted. I don't need that anymore. I'll put that aside. Okay, so now you can get a feel and see, right? So if we're looking at the birds like this, like, are we about the same? I'd say that the base is fine, but I might want to build up right on here a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll just take another piece, and I don't think I'll need this much, just to wrap it a little bit on here. So when I take it off the skewer, I'll stab those loose fibers in to make it easier for me to wrap the wool. So what you're going to want to do is you always want to wrap away from your face. I know. Oh, what? I'm just telling you this now. Yeah, I know. You usually wrap away from your face. You do get a tighter wrap. And I didn't need that much wool, so I'm pulling some off. So again, I'm pinching it where I want to pull it, and I'm just pulling that off. And I'm just going to pull this wool around like this. And again, you could use your multi-tool here. You could use a single needle. This is all about your comfort. I'm not here to say anything's right or wrong. We all have our own ways of doing things. We find what's comfortable for us. I have taught people who I have arthritis, and it's always a challenge to figure out like how can you hold the needle, what kind of tools could you get, but you know, there's always a way, and hopefully everyone can continue to keep felting. All right, this is good. This is good enough. All right, so I'll just give it a few more stabs just to make sure that that wool's on there. Now I'm going to create the head. What I did was I wanted to get, what I want is I want a like half circle shape. But I found that it's much easier to just pull a piece of wool off. In this case, it's about 10 inches. You could do bigger. You know, again, it's about working small and building up, right? So what I do here is I'm going to tie a knot into the center of my piece. So I said this piece was about 10 inches by half an inch. Actually, it's like one end looks like half an inch, one end looks like a quarter of an inch. So, you know, it's wool, yay. So I tied a little knot, and how I did that is I just slid it down to make sure, right, that like, because it's batting, if I just pulled it, it'd probably pull off. So when you're doing that, I just slide the knot down when I wrap the knot. All right, so now I'm going to showing it's not always easy. So I'm just going to wrap. I'm starting to wrap a little bit around my finger. Wasn't quite big enough, so I'm just wrapping around the knot. I used my finger to build up a little bit more mass on that. All right, so now I'm carefully stabbing. I want a more rounded shape, right? So I started to encourage that, but I'm just really tacking the wool on right now. Now see how really fuzzy this is? This won't make a difference when I start to wrap it around like this. Okay. I can already tell that this is too small, so I definitely will have to add more. I want to get these loose fibers in. I know this is quite small. I would say if you don't want to work this small, definitely use a half an inch wide piece. Because right now, right, see how tiny that is? It's way too small for a bird head. So I could have gotten away with using a bigger, a thicker piece, maybe like this, to create the head. If you started small like this, what I would recommend is then you take the set, another small piece, hope that it's a little more even. And then I'm just going to start wrapping it in X and then around. My piece got thick as it went along, but if you do it in like an X pattern, right? So you go this way, come around and go that way, and then go in the center, you'll get a much more rounded piece, right? You're sculpting again, right? So again, I'm being very careful here with my fingers. I'm using a single needle just because I don't want to stab myself. I do stab myself. I know you're a beginner. So yes, stabbing happens. Just watch my tomato video. Stab myself a few times on making the stem. Right, but once I connect it onto the head, then I can start to shape it more. Okay, so I don't want to go any bigger than this. In fact, it might even be a little big, but it's still a bit soft. So when I add this on, I oftentimes will tell people to add some wool where it's fuzzy on the bottom. I'm just gonna, I didn't stab this all the way, so I'm just gonna fuzz out the bottom just very gently and attach these loose fibers on instead of adding a whole piece on there, right? Because I'm trying to make this simple. So where I'm gonna attach this is I'm gonna put it right here, flush with the breast end, like where the chest is gonna be. Now I'm squeezing it on. I know that might be a little challenging, but I'm just going to give it some stabs here, and then this is where I will hold it up and see. So I'm holding it up and stabbing it down. I'm already starting to connect it on here, so that way I don't have to work as hard, but I definitely want to make sure it's centered on to the body, right? So I'm making sure it's centered, and by just pressing it down, I'm making sure it's not moving. But what I'm doing right here is I am stabbing an angle from the top to the bottom to make sure that this head is connected. As I said, I tried different ways of connecting this head, and it was definitely challenging. And this is again where you could use a multi-needle tool to help with this part. If you feel like your bird's head got too large, like you can see mine is actually in the right spot. I will be adding another little piece here to build up the chest of the bird. But if you think your head got way too big, I would start over again. I wouldn't force working with what you have. Also, it depends on how thick your top coat color is going to be. You want to be careful if it's a thicker type of wool. You may want to make sure that you make a smaller head as you're adding it on. Okay, so this is the basic shape. As you can see, I want to sculpt it just a little bit more, though it's not too bad. It's pretty close, right? So I guess this is up to you if you want to just work with this piece. If you wanted to add a little more of a chest, what you could do is I'm just taking some wool based on the size of my bird, and I'm just stacking these fibers together, and I'm going to create a little pillow. Right, so I'm just creating a small shape that I'm going to fold on one end and fold another. And I'm going to hold up and see, right? You know, if I want to build up a little more bulk, right? So what I'm doing is I'm creating just a piece that has loose ends that will easily attach, right, to the shape I have and blend in to the shape that I have created. But you can see how this will build up a little bit of bulk. You could always even add a little bit more of a piece in the center here before you attach it on. And maybe you have too much wool here, right? So I pulled a little bit off. And so here is where I will then hold it. And I'm just tacking it on to see if it's in the right spot, to see if it's working. Like I can still shift this around, right? And this, again, a multi-needle tool is going to speed up this process. Right? So this is a way that will even help blend it a bit. So I'm stabbing on an angle so that it will blend on each side. If you find maybe it's a little too floofy for your face, you could pull some of that off, or you could just really, like, I'm loosening it up, and then I'll just blend that in. And I could use a single tool for that, just blending those loose fibers into the shape. So this is just a good way. It's just good practice to get to know wool a little bit better. You could use this is where I would use this tool to help smooth out, like it'll even out the wool a little bit. If I want my head here to angle a bit more, I could stab down in that, I could stab down in that kind of on an angle in that direction. That can get some of the wool down there. But you can see it just gave me a little bit more of a chest in the silhouette of my bird. I make a lot of owls, just in case anyone's wondering. Right, so you can see like this bird's head is a little bit wider. This one's a little smaller. You could add a little bit more wool at this point if you think the head might be a little small. If I would just use small strips. I'm just gonna move this aside. I would just use small strips and I would tack on the one side. The reason that I'm recommending small strips is because it may be too much, right? You may add too much to it. So if you're going thin, right, as I come around is where I will start to stab some of the wool to check the shape. And again, if I feel like I have too much, I could always take some off, but I think this will be okay. Now, this bird's head might be sitting up a little bit higher than the other birds. Again, it's not, you know, these are not like supposed to be super real. They're supposed to just be an easy, fun project to get you started with doing various shapes to create your bird, right? So if you felt like you wanted a smoother transition down the back, again, you could use, I'm just pulling some wool apart. You could create a little, even, you don't have, it doesn't have to be a triangle, but I'm just creating like a little pillow, right? That I can, you can even, actually, you could just even make it like a little oblong type pillow and lay it in there, right? And that would shape your bird to have a bit more of a, right, it just like that it tapers down as opposed to has this sharp edging on it. And again, for time's sake, I'm going to move to the multi-needle tool. And again, if you think you've got too much, you can always pull off some wool. Like, you know what, it really is, you're sculpting. If you sculpt with clay, you always remove some clay, right? So this is, again, what's the shape of your bird. If this is your very first project and you've never felted before, right, don't be too hard on yourself. It takes practice to really start to master using wool, and I can't even say that I've mastered it. Because every time I think I've gotten it, then I try a different type of wool and it works differently, right? So every wool is not created equal. I tend to like using Dorset or Romney. There's a wool called Columbia. They all felt really nice and they get quite firm. Where something like Merino might be a little too soft, especially for someone doing beginning felting. So, all right, so that's good. So hopefully you've learned a lot in that part. The next part is where we will put our core wool aside, and I will show you how to add the top coat colors. Okay, so for my bird, I've decided to make a blue bird because I already have a red bird and I have a yellow bird. So I thought, why not make a blue bird? Now the wool that I'm using, this is actually Dorset wool, and it's actually a Dorset cross. Sorry, it's a Dorset cross, and I hand dyed this myself. So the wool's going to wind up being maybe a little chunkier, and when I felted it, it got a little bit felted, right? So depending on the wool that you're using, if you're using like a Maori bat, it's going to be a bit smoother. So on these birds, I used Maori batting, but I don't know what kind of wool you're going to use. If you bought a supply kit, then you'll have Maori wool, but everyone has different kinds of wool, right? So this just happens to be wool I dyed myself. Okay, so because this wool might be a little chunky, I'm just what I'm doing is I'm just taking my fingers and doing this with the wool to just make sure that finding the chunks, and you know, I'm gonna just remove some of the bits that might be a little stringier. When I add the color on, I don't want to go super thick to start, right? You don't want to go like paper thin, but or like paper thin. You don't want to go like really thin, like this thin. So when I lay it on, I want to make sure I don't lose that shape that I had. So you can see all the little holes in here. So what I'm going to do is, because I'm going to have to do layering, I'm just going to pull some up, and I'm just going to loosen some of the edges here. This will help the wool blend with the other wool. You know, if you have like a really sharp edge, like it gets chunky and looks a little weird. So I start with the back of my bird first. You could start with the head. You know, this is up to you, right? I'm just going to start with the back. Maybe good while you're getting used to this. So see how I'm holding it very tight. Like I call this like petting the cat, petting the dog, petting the hamster, petting the bunny rabbit. I'm just holding it close to my base shape so that I don't get a lot of lumps and bumps. This tool is a really good one if you've got the finer needles in it. I'm just going to use a single needle for now till I get it connected on. You can see I'm going to have to do another layer, right? But see how I've left the edges loose? This way I can blend other wool into it a little bit easier. So this is what I was talking about a few minutes ago. Now, when I'm at the end piece, I want to be careful because I don't want to stab myself. I also don't want the base to get really thick. So you want to make sure that if you've got too much wool here, that you pull some of it off. But right now I'm doing okay. So now I'm going to pull down this side and I'm going to tack that on. You could use a multi-tool like that to punch it down more, and then I'm just going to come up and around. And again, because I know this is going to overlap these colors, I'm just going to thin it up, and see how tight I'm pulling it, because I really want to get this, I want to keep my shape that I just spent all that time working on. And again, I'm just going to bring it along the top. You can see I'm just switching tools. I just want to give you ideas of things, of what you can use to do this part. I can see the wool's still pretty loose here. I'm just going to wrap this around. Remember that once you put that final, I'm not going to use the red needle, that's going to show holes. I'm using finer needles for this part, in case you're wondering. This is what you're going to see on here, right? So you want to make sure that you're not seeing like a lot of lumps and bumps and holes and things like that. But again, I'm just going to take another piece of my wool, and then when I hold it on there, you can't see that white underneath anymore. And if it makes it a little easier, you might want to just take a small piece and wrap the tail end. But you are also going to be adding a tail, and that I'm going to show you how to cover the wool on that. So you don't have to worry so much about this end, because we're going to add a tail on there, and then I'm going to show you how to smooth that out by adding some wool to cover the seam on that. But since I have, well, I'm just going to use this. I liked this piece. I'm going to use this piece. Oop. Oh, now I've got wool everywhere. Okay, there we go. I apologize if I keep shifting around on my pad. I tend to work all over my pad. Luckily, I can see my camera so that I can make sure that I keep recentering myself. So I hope you don't mind that. This is all done by me and my phone camera. And then I go and use the fancy tools to edit the video. All right, so I may have too much. If I come around, it might wind up getting too thick. I'm just going to pull some of this off. And then again, see how nice and thin that wool is there. So I'm just going to pull this around. That wool really likes to cling to my needle. I guess that's not a bad thing. Sorry, I just flipped around. It was feeling a little soft there. So again, because I'm probably not going to add any more wool to here, excuse me, I'm going to use my finest needle now as I attach these final fibers in. And the more randomized and loose they are, like how spread apart I did that, it's going to make it easier to blend those fibers together so we don't see so much of a seam. And again, a tool like this is really going to help out with that. Okay. All right. So see, you can see I'm not really going to do much more with that. When we do add the wings on, right, they will cover a bit of this side. I'm still covering this. I just wanted you to be aware that, like, there will be some stuff going on over it. So if it's not 100% covered, but mostly covered, you're going to be adding more wool to it. So now I'm going to add, here, I'll add wool to the chest part. And again, if this wool here is loose, like if you loosened it up, it's going to blend in with the blue I already added on there. And there are ways that you could just add another thin layer later to cover up any seams that may have happened while you were tacking it on. Yeah, so I have a lot of different needles. I tend to flip around with needles. If I say flip around, I mean I just tend to I have like 3 or 4 needles usually around, and then and then I have my multi-tools, and I go around. I start to see what's happening. So like this tool I'll pull out when I want to smooth down some of the top coat that I'm adding. If I want a little more control, I might switch to my 38 star needle. Yeah, this is really needs to be covered. So I'm gonna take. I took some wool. This is all I'm doing here is I'm just getting the fibers to go in like one direction. I'm trying to create a little patch, so I'm finger carding my wool just so I can get a little more of what I want. So I'm covering the tail end. I felt like it was a little too would bald be the right word? That it needed a little bit more of the blue on there. And you can see, like, I'm gonna wind up just doing this. So see how I'm just wrapping my hand around it? So that's giving me, what I did was, I was just getting the wool closer to the shape so that I could give it a stab. Once I add the tail on, I'll come back here and smooth some of this out, right? And so I'm going to add the wool to the head next here. So again, I have some of the wool I have, it's a little chunkier here. This is what I was saying, I dyed this wool myself, so some of it could have been the way I was dyeing the wool. When in the dyeing process, I may have agitated it a little bit. I was working with a few people. Someone else may have been poking at it. When wool gets hot, it will felt together. So again, I don't have a rhyme or reason. You could be very meticulous about this and be pre-measuring. I'm just trying to cover the wool, the head and the body up without using too much excess. Right, so that's your whole goal. Okay, so I think you've got the idea of doing this part. I'm going to finish off camera and come back and show you how to make the wings. Okay, so I got most of the wool on here pretty tight to the body. I'm finding that this particular type of wool I'm using isn't going on quite as smooth as I like, but that's okay because it's wool that I dyed, hand dyed myself, and I think it turned out pretty good. So to make your wings, I'm going to. So I have all this batting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically the wing is going to measure about where, kind of right here, like where your head is. So maybe about a quarter of an inch in there, and then down to where your tail. So right about here, right? So on this bird, I would be making it from this point here to about here. Right, so it's really just maybe a third of the head. My eye will go here somewhere, right? So in this case, when you create your two wing wool bases, which will be like little rectangles, you're going to want to make sure that it's about that size. So I'm just using my needle to give myself an idea. So I'm going to need to make sure that from this point to the tip is what I'm going to measure. So I said about that point. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull some batting. So I'm pulling batting off of this piece here, and I'm laying it down in a rectangle wool. Here, I'll just move this stuff over. Let's put that there, that there. Here we go. Oh yeah, now we're in the center. I'm going to lay it like this so you can see it easier. So again, we're looking at, right, this is our bird. So you'll create your little square, which is what we're going to stamp our shape into, to go over on all the sides. Right? So in other words, if the wing is going to be this long, you want to have some wool coming off the other side. So in this case, I'll just switch needles. So I'm creating a wing shape into my rectangle, right? So that way, I can even hold up my bird to see, like, okay, I think that might be the right width. But you pre-measured, right? We marked our spots, so to about here. So this might be a little long. I can fold this. I can fold. I'll be folding that in, so I can correct this once I create it. But make sure that you make a second piece exactly the same as the first. So if you pulled some pieces off, right, you want it to be about the same size and the same thickness, so that you don't have to guess, and your wings will be about the same size. So, right, so you'd want to make that second piece up front. So you'd have two pieces, right, about the same. I'm just going to set that aside. If I add more wool to this shape later, I'm going to have to make sure that I do the same for the second piece that I made. All right, so I'm going to fold this over. I typically would be working on this like this, but I thought you might see it a little easier if I turned it to the side. So what I'm doing is I'm securing, and you could use your red needle at this point because you're not wrapping anything, you're just folding it over. So I'm folding it over that stab that I did. So what I'm doing is I'm creating my basic wing shape. You can make lots of shapes with this technique. And this is where I start to lose the second curve. But because I stabbed it into my pad, it's sticking into the pad at that spot. I think that's going to be a little too thick for my tip of my wing, so I will be pulling some wool off the bottom. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this up. So see how I'm gently pulling it off my pad? It will stick into the pad. So I'm pulling this up, and I'm now evaluating, like I'm feeling it. It's going to be a bit thin in here, but I'm not going to do anything yet until I start holding it up and seeing what the size is on my actual bird. So it's going to shrink in a little bit. I'll just leave my bird there. It's going to shrink in a little bit. Anyway, I'm just going to pull a little bit of wool. I'm just a little bit, right? So I'm really pinching where I don't want it to come up. And then I'm going to fold that around. I already know my wing is a little bit big, so I'm going to definitely be folding this part up. But I don't want to lose a point, so don't make it too thick, right? If you want to keep that point. But right now, I just want to get this wool to stay connected. So once I pulled it up, this is going to be my nice side, right? Because this will be where my seams are. So you do want to make sure that you stab it on the good side as well. You want to connect these fibers. You want to connect them all the way on each side. I also will use my punch tool, but first I see that it's a bit loose on this edge. So I'm going to just gently, just lightly folding it. I should be doing it on the sloppy side. Did I just say you had a good side and a bad side? So I'm just gently taking the edge, and I just want to make sure it's not super soft, because if you're going to go use a tool like the punch tool, it can be a little aggressive and it could flatten things a bit more. So one thing I do is after I give it a stab with a multi-tool, I'll just rub it in my hands. I'm just doing this. Like I don't want it to get too flat. I just want to get some of those loose fibers in there, and I want to start working on shaping my wing a little bit. So now I can hold it up and see, is it the right size? It's a little bit big still. So what a lot of times I'll do this is that I will just gently stab the fibers to like they're going to connect, and it's going to shorten it up a little bit. Again, I can always take my finger like this and pull back. That'll help roll the wool, and then I can stab it down, right? So as you're working on this, right, if you want the point to be a little more pointy, right, I really work on that point where I'll fold the one side and then fold the other side. It's still very soft. If you have a multi-tool, as I said, you could use this tool at this point. And just always remember where your nice side is. Right? You could tack this down on any side. And again, if I do this enough, if you've wet felted, all I'm doing is it's not actually wet felting, but it's getting those fibers to mat up a little bit more so that I can then come in. And you can see I'm always, like, it's very soft on these edges, so I'm always tacking that down. Okay, so now I'm going to do the measurement again. And this looks like it's going to be a really good measurement. It may be too wide on the sides. Like I might want to make the wing a little more narrow. Remember, when you tack it on, you could always shrink it a little bit So don't go too crazy and get it to exact size. When you attach it, you can still sculpt it on, right, to the body. If you feel it and it feels like really thin right here, you can take some wool, and then I go to the sloppy side. So let me make sure. Okay, that's my front. All right, so this is the part no one's going to see because it's going to be attached to the bird. So I will tack on, you know, a little bit extra wool to make it a little bit thicker, you know, depending on what I'm feeling. And so it's a feel test, right? So I'm feeling how thick is the wool. There's not really a way to just hold up to a window or anything like that, which I can do in my felt painting if I'm using a natural white canvas felt sheet. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'm happy. And as I hold it up, it's the right measurement. So see, if you feel like it's not long enough, I can just give it a little stretch. Like if you want it to really go down further. But I think this is good. This is where I measured it out. Right, so there, it's sitting on the bird. And as I said, when I attach it, right, it's going to shrink. I can shrink it a little bit, right, when I tack it on. If I think that the wings are too wide this way. So now you've pre-measured your other piece. So now what I'm going to do is, you can do either way. I oftentimes do the point at the top. I know I didn't when I was doing the first one, but now I'm going to do this. Since I showed you the other way, now I'm going to show you the way that I would be doing it. So let me make sure you can see me. I'm right in the center here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stab around my shape. If you've done my pansy video, I have a template that I will provide to anyone who asks for free, or if you bought the kit, the supply pack that goes with it. You can use paper templates, cardboard templates, and things that you could do the same thing where you lay it down and tack around it. This is just going to help us keep it closer to the same size. As I said earlier, if I added a little more, I may need to add a little bit more to this. And again, I'm folding it over. If it's easier for you to fold down the triangular part first and come down. Again, no right or wrong way of doing this. It's just what you get comfortable with. We all get our own techniques. And if you think it might be too thick on the top, you can fold it down like this, right? So if you fold it, you can take some of that thickness and then bring it down to the center. This is just, you know, something you could try. And as I said, you could use a multi-needle tool if you're comfortable with that at this point, or you could stay with a single needle. I can use my 38 triangle at this point. Now I can feel that when I go to pick this up, this happened to me when I made the other two birds too. It may be a little thin, and if I just yank it off, it's going to pull it all apart. So you got to be very careful. I use my fingers, and I just kind of gently pull it up off the bottom. You can see where it's stuck into the pad. And then I'm going to fold over the excess wool and tack that on, and I'm stabbing now on the other side. If you loosen the wool up enough, even though like this will most likely be my clean side, the side that like I will put against the bird, as long as you leave the fibers loose, then they will these little fibers will blend in with the other fibers. Okay, so right now I'm just trying to get the wool to stay connected to itself without unraveling or falling apart. And I do want, before I use the multi-tool, I do make sure that I have a handle on that. And again, you could hold up this one and it's still about the same size. So I don't want to shrink this in anymore. So I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to give it some stabs with the multi-tool. And then again, in my hand, you can see a pattern here. But this is what I do. This is how I do it. And again, I'll be sculpting the wing to fit, to be like the other wing. I definitely find that doing this helps get those like loose fibers to go in a little bit better into the rest of the wool, where when I stab it, it will hold firmer. I'm just feeling, I don't know if I'm going to need to add any more. I feel like the thickness is there, but again, I need to keep stabbing and stabbing and stabbing and making sure the edges are firm in here, so that it matches this one. And it is going on the other side of the body, so people aren't going to be like really measuring and comparing it. They're just going to be amazed with your beautiful little birdie. So like, you felted that? Okay, well, I'm feeling it, and I think it does need a little bit of wool. I'll just add some into the center here. And for time's sake, I'm just going to use the multi-tool to get that in there. Yeah, that helped. That helped. It helps me be able to hold on to it a little more. It's also given me a little bit more wool for it to grab onto. Okay, so they're about the same now. And again, I can shape the point a little bit more once I attach it on. I could just work on a little bit like this using my finger and then stabbing it to try to get that, keep that pointed shape. You know, you could spend hours being meticulous. So for time's sake, I'm just going to put these over here. I'm going to make the tail first. It'll just be easier to add the tail and do that treatment, then add your wings on. So I'm going to create the tail, and then, oh, I'm taking a quick look. I'm going to make the tail, but I'm not going to attach it yet. I want you to, like, while you're working on the wings, I'm going to make the tail, not attach it yet. We're going to want to put the beak on first before we put on the tail. The eyes are the last thing that we'll be working on. So I'll just show you how I make the tail. And again, so this is where the end of my bird is. So I go about an inch beyond that. And I made the tail, but the width of the bottom there, right? I did that with both the birds, so you can see. And this one's a little thicker because the body was a little bit thicker. So if I'm going to go about an inch beyond my tail, and I want to leave some fluff up here, again, if you have a ruler, it'd probably be easier to measure, but I'm going to just say I'm going to go about that much beyond. And so when I create my piece, this is all going to be fuzzy when you go to attach it on. We'll be attaching it on basically like this, right? So, interesting. So we're gonna, I'll just make it like that. Okay. Oop. Oh, there it is. My wing flew away. So again, in this case, I'm going to create a long, narrow piece like this. I'm just going to angle it like this so you can see it. And if the magic of videos, I just dropped my needle. I dropped one of my tools on the ground. Hold on a sec here. Happens to the best of us. Okay, so I can see here, this is going to be a little long, so I'm just going to add this. So I'm going to have a nice thickness for my bird. So if I wanted to go an inch beyond, this is pretty good. I will want to make sure I have enough wool to connect it. So I'm going to add this here. When you're doing stacking wool like that, you can give it a few quick jabs just to start getting those fibers to stay together. And it'll fold in. Okay, so the width that I want it's going to be about this, right? And then you want to have enough on the outside to fold over to create that thickness for your tail. So if you're looking here and this is where you want to go and this is your inch here, right? So this is how I'm measuring my tail. And again, you're going to want to leave the fibers here loose. You could taper your tail a little bit here at the bottom, right? So it kind of swooshes down a little bit. And don't worry, we can add more wool if we need more. So I made the tails have just a sharp edge. Again, this is for beginners. This is something that, you know, I want to try to make as easy as possible. So this way I can just fold the top down. And as I tack this on, I'm making sure that I don't lose the edges of the wing. So I'm going to fold one side over. Usually the one that might look a little bit shorter than the other side, because the other side I can fold over and then I could just continue those fibers over a little bit. Now when it comes to the tail, you will be able to see the bottom and the top. So you do want to make sure you try to keep it a little bit tidy, the fibers, so you don't really see a lot of seams. So right now, again, I'm just tacking it on. I'm going to just give it a punch here with this tool. And I'm going to pick up because I can feel it sticking into my pad. And I'm just going to turn it over and I'm just going to give it some stabs on this side. I'm not going to do any of the rolling in my hands just yet because I want to make sure these fibers are connected and I don't want to lose my shape. But I will do the punch tool. So now I'm going to hold my bird up and the tail got a bit wide. So I do want to smoosh it in a bit. And I have this wool that's going to blend onto the top of the body. So you can see how I'm going to attach it on. So we're going to attach it to the top of the body and I'm going to show you how to clean up the bottom. Pulled it toward myself. So now I'm going to, like I was showing you with the wings, I'm just going to pull these edges in a little bit with my finger so I can thicken that up. I may have a little too much wool here, so I'm just going to pull some of that off, and then I'm just going to apply this to the center of the tail. If you leave it a bit loose, it should blend in with the rest of the tail. Like the wool should blend in without looking too much like a seam. Again, for time's sake, multi-tools always really speed up the process. I find when you want to get something a little bit thicker, it's always good to stab along the edge. I could add a little bit more wool around the tail. That'll help it. That could help it too. Oops. Realizing that when I dyed this, the colors, some are a little bit lighter than others. So I want to make sure I stay with the same blue that I was using. So I could lay a thin piece here and tack that on. This will help thicken it up, but also I can fold it over and use a finer needle and connect those on. I'm getting a lot of little vegetal bits here. Okay, so again, see, I'm folding it, gently folding those loose fibers over and tacking that on. And now my tail is thickened up a bit, so that's good. And again, you could spend hours refining and fining. What I would recommend is you want to make sure that your tail is the thickness and the way you want it to look before you attach it on. It's really a lot harder once it's attached to work on it, because it's attached to the bird, then you're gonna be trying to flip the bird. You're gonna be like rotating the bird around, right? So that's good. And for time's sake, I'm just gonna put this aside. Oh yeah, here we go. There. Ta-da! Helps those little fibers come in. So that's pretty much your wings and your tail. I'm gonna refine my tail just a little bit more before I attach it on, but the next step is going to be creating your beak. So to make the beak, you could use a toothpick or you could use a skewer. You could use the point, but for a beginner, that's a bit of a difficult task. So if you look at my birds, you can see that, well, this one got a little bit pointier than this beak. It really, for a beginning project, you don't want to worry too much about a very pointed beak. So I will use my orange wool and show you how to do it, and don't worry too much about whether it's super pointy or not. As long as it's the correct sizing for your bird. And as I said, you can see there are two different sizes of beak. They're around the same width, but again, if you have enough wool, like I'm not going to need all of this, right? If first you don't succeed, then try again. So I'm going to pull off a piece of my orange wool here. I have also dyed this wool, which is pretty cool. And again, like as I was talking earlier, sometimes the wool that I was using has some chunks in it. If you buy like Maori wool or something, a little, this would have been a better core wool than a top coat. But anyway, just so you know, like if you buy like a Maori wool or something like that, like the batting, it'll probably be smoother. But you know, all depends on where you buy it from and who you get it from. So anyway, like if you use the skewer for the bird, you could use the skewer for the beak. You can see that the toothpick is a bit skinnier. So you may have, you know, might be a slightly tighter wrap. So if you're using the skewer, what I do is I just wrap it around a few times like I did before. It's going to be a bit similar, except at a smaller scale, where I just angled it up slightly. I'm going around so this is a thick piece. If you want your beak this size and you want to have a point, you're going to have to make your beak a little bit bigger or get a skinnier piece to start with. So I'm just going to what I did was I wrapped it a bit at the top there, and now I'm just going around. Oops, I grabbed two needles there. I don't have a needle that large. Okay, now once I wrapped it around, I'm just going to take it in my hand like this and just roll it a bit to tighten up that wrap. This is going to be a little small, I think, for my bird face, right? Because the beak's going to go right about here. I got a pretty wide face. So I think I'm going to add a little bit more wool to it. So see, I took a skinnier piece, and I'm just going to wrap that around a little bit more. So what I'm doing is this is like a nice little skinny piece. So this is the nice width for my beak. It's about a little, maybe a little larger than 1/4 of an inch, not quite 1/2 an inch. So I can angle up a little bit, but I don't want to really, if I want to keep a point, I don't want to go too much. And if yours is about the thickness that you want, you could always pull off I'm just going to finish, oops, that's what happens. This wool got a little bit, and see how it's sliding up? I'm going to stab it down a little bit. I want to make sure I don't unravel. Okay. Hopefully this isn't too big now, but I think I've got a pretty large bird here, so I think this will be good. And as I said, if you make your beak and it winds up being a little too big, you could always make another one. So I'm going to slide this off. I could always cut some of it off, like as long as you have some fuzzy. So if I go to add this on and it looks like it's going to be way too big. But first I'm going to stab it. And so see, I already lost a bit of my point by stabbing it. I'm going to tug a little here at the base to help widen that a little. So you can see like I've lost a little, like it's I want to spread these fibers apart a little bit more so I can have a firmer base, and then I might need to pull a little bit of that off. But so I'm just going to work on making sure this won't unravel. This is where having, like, I would be holding it higher. I could lower it down. I can't get my camera much lower than it is, but if sorry, if you're working on it and you're starting to, like, it's mushing or something like that, right? Having some little finger pads or something to help hold it, you'll be able to, like, work with it a little bit more. I've been working with fiber a long time, like with wool, so I sort of know how to handle it, but again, I've stabbed myself in demos before, and I stabbed myself when working on projects trying to get things to excuse me, shape. I'm trying to get that shape. It'll probably be easier once I attach it to the face to work on the shape. Now, if your face is firm enough, right, so I'm saying about here is where I want to put my beak. I had established my eye will go there. Right, so this is nice and centered. So I'm going to, first I want to make sure I don't have too many of these long pieces. It'll get caught. It'll get a little bit caught up. Like it'll get lumpy around the outside. So this is the tricky part. This is why I said don't put your tail on first. I know we made our tail, but so I'm very carefully pressing it against the face, and I'm gonna take, I'm taking my medium needle, you know, my 38 star in this case. I guess it could be considered a fine needle. And I'm stabbing directly down. I'm getting those little loose fibers in. I notice my face is a little smooshy, probably my top coat, but that will work in my favor if my beak was a little large. I can really press those fibers in, and right now I can feel it's still really loose. So I'm working on getting these fibers into the face, right? And then if it's not quite in the center, this is where you could stab it a little bit. Like you have a little bit of room. I can pull some of the wool off the blue, and I can stab it toward the beak, and that'll help. It'll help so you don't see so much of the right, so you don't see like that I shifted it over. I'm looking at this bird, and this bird I had a little bit of trouble with, so you can, it wants to keep like leaning over that way, but you know, it from the side you can't really tell, you know, so you can see the beaks are on there. And again, you could keep stabbing the wool of the head. I've noticed my head, the wool that I put on, it's a little bit loose. So I can still tack that in. So I hope that this helps with the beak. As I said, if you made a beak way too big, don't force it. I would just start over again. You know, if at this point I felt like my beak was too thin, I could take a thin piece, and I've done this before, and I'll tack in. So I took this like little thin piece. Here, I'll move this bird off. Ooh, I'm shifting all over the place here. Okay, I got to move some stuff off my pad. So I'm just going to tack in some of this loose orange wool, and then I'm just going to wrap this around the base. That'll build up the base of my beak, and if I pull it tight enough, I should get it to give me a little more of that domed look that I was going for. Now, if the wool isn't spread apart enough, you will see that seam that you added, so you want to make sure that you spread those fibers apart a bit. And there's a chunky piece there, so I'll take that off. All right, and that will help blend in to the rest of the beak. Oh my goodness, I am shifted all over the place. Here we go. And then you want to make sure you tack that in. I am using a finer needle at this point. I find the finer needles, I don't see the stab marks as much, so this will just help me make sure that I don't see as many holes in the wool that I added, and it'll help me blend it a little bit more. So sometimes I get a little bit of a lumpy nose, but you know what? It's just, it makes it cuter, right? Nothing's perfect in this world. Okay, so I think that's good for a beak. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to tamp down the wool a little bit on the head and the body here. Okay. I always think I have it, and then it's like I turn around and it's like, oh no, I guess I didn't have it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to add the tail, and then we're going to add the wings. So here's my tail. I finished it off. All I did was I just made it a little bit thicker here, and just made sure that it was sized right. So I'm going to really spread the fibers apart right back here. So I want that to blend in. You could fuzz out a little bit right here. We're going to lay it down, and remember I said about an inch off the back. So I'm going to spread these fibers onto the back, and I'm going to start to tack in the direction of the fibers, and I'm just going to establish that this is even on here as well. So you could give a few stabs down. I've noticed it's a little bit lighter under here. It's just because I dyed the wool, and so some of it wasn't evenly dyed. It was like one of my first times dyeing wool. So what that means is that I have some darker bits and lighter. It'll blend in up here, and then I will show you how I'm going to blend in. I can blend down at the bottom, and it'll all look nice and even. Okay, so now that I know that I have it in the right spot, I'm now going to just start tacking down the loose wool. And again, I'm doing that, what I call pet the animal, pet the cat, pet the dog, and I'm holding on to it. I'm holding it tight to the body, and I'm stabbing into the direction of the loose fibers so that I can get those to blend in a little bit better. If you want the tail a little bit longer, right, I could give it a little tug at this point, and I could start to stab it to establish it, and see how I'm holding the tail out. Then that'll help me get that on, but also a little longer. If you're finding that your needle's a little too fine, I would move to a coarser needle. I can see here, like, it's still really loose on this side, so I'm just going to tack this down. Oh yeah, I guess I also used white wool under. So see how the white wool's coming through? Again, this is a way that we can cover that up by adding, we're going to be adding a little piece of blue right here. So why don't we do that right now? I'm going to just use wool that's just a little bit darker. So that'll blend, because I'm noticing it just seems really light here. That I think this will help blend to the tail and over here. So what I've done is I'm pulling, it's not a very thick piece. I just want to make sure it's long enough, right? So you can see here, right? Not too thick, similar color. And what I'm going to do is I'm leaving it all loose. See, I'm leaving it all loose on the edges. And I'm going to lay this down. And I'm going to start by taking my fingers. I'm going to spread these fibers apart. And I'm going to start tacking that on. And I'm going up and stabbing. I'll eventually go and stab like in the direction of the fibers, but I'm just trying to establish it on here right now and get it on where you can't see where I stabbed it. I think this might be a little long, so I'm going to pull a little bit of that off. And now I'm going to tack this into the tail. If you think that it's not enough, what we can do here is I might add a little bit more, just a little bit more blue as I'm tacking this on. And so by using a very thin layer and having it all, the fibers be randomized, it's going to help me blend this in better. And you can flip-flop between a multi-tool and a single needle. And again, like sometimes I'll take my finger and I'll just, sometimes I can do this where if I rub it a little bit and the fibers are attached, it'll remove some of the hole marks. It'll also, sorry, like needle punch marks, but it'll also show me if I've got loose wool, right? Just by just rubbing it like this. And so this is where I can see that I need to, I know I'm stabbing toward myself. What? That's dangerous. And then you could take a tool like this and you could just give it some punches just to make sure that it's established on. And don't be afraid to be flipping it around. You can see I just keep flipping and flipping and flipping. I just really want to make sure that this is on here. And you could then keep working on getting your tail to fit and work. So you can see that's how that's how I did the other birds. So you can see there's the little lump there, which is where the back is, same as here. And I am working on like shaping the tail. So if the tail, I want it to be even a little bit more just straight out. Like this one fans out just a little bit. I could work on that. I can just use my fingernail and spread that wool apart a little bit and help even it up. And so that's how I add the tail. And you could keep playing with it to get the, you know, design. Like I noticed here now, it looks like I have a bit of a divot. If I can't get that even, maybe I would go in and add a little bit more of the blue wool just in this area here. But I'm pretty happy with it. It looks pretty similar to the other birds. Okay. So now I'm going to add the wings on. And remember before I had said to look and make sure that, like this is my messy side. So this is the side I want on the outside, right? And this one doesn't seem to have, like this one's going to be the outside. So the wing colors are just a little bit different, but you know, I don't mind. It's nice. And so, okay, so here I said I wanted the wing to start right about here, right? So just about here on the bird, and then it'll end closer to the tail. So what I'll do is I will tack it on where I think it should go. So I'm giving it some tacks with a finer needle. And then I can take a look and see, is it in the right spot, right? How does it look? You know, does it look too big? I think it's in a good spot. If I want to shrink this up here, so I'm going to take now a more medium needle. I'm going to stab the edge and see how I'm tucking it under a little bit. This is going to help me shorten the wing a little bit if I think it's too long. Same here at the top, right? As I'm tacking it down on the top, I can just stab around the edges a little bit and sculpt that onto my shape, right, onto my bird. And again, you could use a multi-tool. I didn't leave the wing loose at all, so I did pretty much put that down on the body. If you want it up a little higher, right, you could curve it up a little bit and have it go up a bit on the body, right? You could also take the punch tool. If you do this and it flattens it too much, then I would say I wouldn't use it that much, right? I could always stab a little bit toward by trying to get a little longer. I'm seeing as I'm adding it on, some of the loose edges here are getting a little bit, little lumpy. So again, this is where you can work on shaping it. If I think it's sliding a little too much, right, just be cautious of that. Like if it starts to slide backwards as you're stabbing it on, or you're shrinking it up too much, right? So there, the wing is on. And then when I go to add the wing on the other side, I always look like this to see like where is it over here? Does it work? So I'll just give it a few tacks on here so I can take a look in the front and on the side. And if the wing at the back is about the same, then what I'll do is I'll again do what I did earlier, and I'll shrink it up by tucking some of the loose fibers on the end. So I just keep working with it until it looks about the same. So if I got the wing up here because I was stabbing and tucking it there, I want to make sure I do the same thing on this side as well. So I will be stabbing it on here like this and tacking that in. Okay, and again, if you use different tools to help attach it, but just make sure now that you're getting it even with another piece, that you want to constantly keep checking to make sure that it looks right, that you're looking at it from all the angles, from the top, from the bottom. You can see where I can see where I flatten this one down a bit more. All right, so it's a constant just making sure everything's sitting where it's supposed to, right? And that you're not, misshaping it at all, and then you can just keep going. You could get very meticulous with these projects. Some people are, say it's good enough, and some of us we wind up spending way too much time on them. Oh, there I go, sliding around. Oh, I apologize for the squeaking. My table all of a sudden has decided to squeak today. All right, so that's good. And you could keep tweaking, right? Like, knowing me, I'll sit down when I have some time and I'll probably keep tweaking this bird, right? Because I could always go back in and I can adjust the beak a little bit. Like, I could still shrink it a bit. I could add more wool to it, right? So I could spend another, hour tweaking my bird. But for time's sake, we will move on. let's see, now I'm looking at over here and it looks like it didn't quite tack in there enough. So again, I'll be going back and tweaking things. I can do that at this point. I can add some more wool, right? I could, you know, if this is a little lumpy, I could add a little piece there and fill that in. But you want to see how the eyes are made. So I will record that next. Okay, so last thing for your bird, for this simple bird, are you questioning simple? Is to add the eyes. I'm going to show you two different ways on how to do this. The first way I'm going to, I keep tweaking. Okay, the first way is how to create an eye that is felted on, and then I'll show you how to add the glass eyes to it. When I create two eyes, I always measure out the same amount of wool. This may be too big, this may not be enough. I just pulled a little piece off of my batting. My batting bat. So you can see, I'm just going to roll them in my hand. I can always add more to it if I need to. So I always say don't go too big, because if you go way too big and you're trying to shrink the eye, it's gonna be frustrating, right? Everything keeps flopping around. Okay, so on bird faces, the eyes are fairly close to the beak, right? They're not like right against the beak, but they're pretty close to the beak, right? Closer than far away. So if you put the eye way back here, right, it's not going to look right. So you want it to be closer to the beak. Usually, I find they're usually about maybe a half an inch, quarter to half an inch from the beak. So that eye was way too small. So I'm going to need to take more and roll it and create an eye. But for time's sake, I'm just going to add the other eye onto here. So the idea is that you want to, so what I did was I created two pieces and now I'm adding onto the piece, right? And now I have a little more control as to the size of the eye. I tend to use finer needles at this point. Depends on how soft your project is. I don't want the eye to get super huge, so as I'm adding this, I start to squeeze a little bit around the eye, and I'm trying to get this rounded. So I have this technique I call sweep and tuck, where I'm stabbing around the fibers. So I'm stabbing under and into the color to get this round, sharp edge, right? So getting it round is different than getting the sharp edge. You can do a sharp edge for anything, but I find that it is a bit challenging to get that roundedness in the eye. This is why a lot of people like to use the glass eyes, but I wanted to show you both ways. So at one point I could take a multi-needle. I find it's better to just use a single needle at this point. Using more than one could mess up and rearrange what you've been working on. So I do spend quite a lot of time, excuse me, working on the eyes to get them rounded. Excuse me. I'm having some sinus problems today. All right. Yeah, I'm having a lot of, I've been doing a lot with wool today, and so with the recording, and I had another demo I was doing. My sinuses are really dripping today. So I apologize for the coughing. I've shut the camera off, turned it back on again. So you may notice that in the video. Okay. So I think that's pretty good. And to get the little white eye shine, I put my white away. I just need to grab a smidgen. Oh, yeah, smidgen. There we go. Okay, so I grabbed a little. You don't really need a lot. Like, in fact, this is probably too much for the eye shine. But I'm just going to show you. I'm just going to roll this little bit, and it's an eye reflection. I call it eye shine, eye reflection. We're just adding a little dot to the eye to give it a little bit of a more realistic glistening that you see in everybody's eyes. So I tend to use a medium needle when I do this. If your eye reflection is way too big, it's going to make your bird look blind. So you want to have a small piece. So what's happening is I'm stabbing this in, and as I'm stabbing it in, it's shrinking up a bit. If I stab it in and it sucks all the way in, then that means my wool's too soft. I'm noticing that, like, as I'm working with this, I'm losing it a bit, but you'll have to keep working with it. Excuse me. You'll have to keep working with it to get it to the right size. I might need to add a little bit more, so I just grabbed another smidgen. We're talking like 2-3 fibers maybe off of some white wool. So I'm adding another little bit in here and seeing if I can get that to stand out. I'll probably have to keep working on it, but that's the basic idea of giving you a little bit of a reflection. I like to make them a little bit more bold than this, but again, I just took like smidgens of wool. If it keeps continually being too small, then take a slightly larger piece. But again, you don't want to be laying a piece this big in the eye and then felting it that way, because that's not a reflection. That looks like a white pupil, right? So you just keep rolling a few small pieces in, and if I start to add it in and it looks like it's going to be too big and I can't shrink that down by stabbing, I'll just use some tweezers and pull it out and start over again. Again, I always believe that you don't, instead of frustrating yourself and continually stab. So there, that's a little bit more what I was going for. Okay. So when it comes to glass eyes, there's a couple different kinds of glass eye. I like the flat ones, right? The ones that have a little bit of a flatness. Well, I mean, a little bit. They are flat. They're a little bit stick out, right? You can see. And then there's these like really round ones. These really round ones, you have to stab a huge divot into your bird so that it doesn't look like it's bug-eyed, right? I don't typically like these. I happen to have some. I just wanted to show you that there are a couple kinds, and I much prefer the flat glass eyes. And I apparently have one with a long stem and one with a short stem. Now, considering the size of my bird's head, this long one might be too long. You could take a pair of wire cutters like this, and you could just snip off some so it's not quite as long, right? This is a little short, but I'm going to show you what I do to get the glass eye in. So first of all, I will establish where this eye is going to go. So because I already have an eye, I want to, I'm going to need to do this anyway. I want to make sure the eye is in the right spot. So a lot of times I will take my needle and look and be like, okay, if you have a ruler, you could use the ruler. And I want to make sure that it's about the same distance. So this is a good spot right here. And if I'm going to add a glass eye, I do stab a divot in here. You can see that I'm stabbing the divot, but I don't think I could get one deep enough for this eye, right? And I'll show you what it looks like once we establish that it's in the right spot, right? So I just give some stabs. It looks like it's going to be in the right spot. You know, again, when you're adding eyes, right, you look, is this in the same spot? Is it around the same, you know, placement on the head when I look at it, right? So you can see, you know, look at it like this is where the eye will go, right? So it's important when you're looking at your birds, right, that you're looking at it from all angles, like, are they in the right spots, right? So again, is it in the same spot on the head, right? Does it look right from the front? Does it look right from the top and side to side? So when I'm going to add glass eyes, I have this tool. It's called an awl tool, AWL. And what it does is I can create a hole that's not permanent necessarily, but where I could stick my bird eye into and see, is it in the right spot, right? And it's still sticking out a bit, so I would want to then come in here and maybe give it, like, really create a better divot. A multi-tool might be a little too aggressive for this, so I'm going to use a single needle. And again, I'll just stab where the center is, and I'll push the needle, or sorry, the eye in. And when I glue the eye in, I could push it, and then it'll probably stick in a little bit more. But you can see, like, it's in the right spot, right? So once I establish that the eye, you know, and I wouldn't glue the eyes in until they're both in the right place. So if you're using the plastic eye, so then what I do is I get this LePage super glue gel. Any kind of gel super glue will work. I would take it off, like, I'm not adding the eye. I would squirt a little bit of the glue on, and then I would slide it back in to the head. You might want to use your awl tool again just to make sure that that hole is still there, because once the glue's on, it can get a little messy. And then I would just hold it in for 30 seconds and then let go, and it'll cure in 24 hours. Now, when it comes to these roundy eyes, so you can see how much it's sticking out, right? You'd really have to work to get that in. So if you're a soft felter, you know, your stuff is a bit squishy, this might work, because as you stab to create the eye socket, it'll probably sink in, right? But you can see how much it sticks out, and no matter how much I would press it in, it's not going to, right? You have to really stab a divot in for that. So that's how you can create eyes. I tend to stick with doing felted eyes, though it is definitely faster to add glass eyes. So I would say, based on your patience level or your how much work you want to do, like we call them felting purists. You know, if you everything's got to be felt. You know, you see, there's no fillers in mine. There's no styrofoam balls or anything. I just felt the wool and sculpt it. So it's all individual taste. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you how to string your bird up if you want to hang it. So what I did was I added nylon cord. I like using nylon cord. This is the size that I use. It's 0.30 millimeters or 0.012 inches. This is a really nice, it's not too thick and it's not too thin of a cord. I find I don't notice it breaking. It's basically bead wire. This is a particular brand that I happen to buy, but I would say if you have a trusted nylon cord, you also can use fishing line if you have that lying around. So what I did, I did not string up the bird that I created in the video, but what I did was I did take, I have lots of beading supplies. So what I've done is, this is a crimp bead. I've got a loose crimp bead over here. They're very small. They look like seed beads, but they're crimping. So you would need to have pliers to squeeze to crimp the cord. But I'm also going to show you, because I don't want you to run out and buy crimp beads and all that fancy stuff if you just want to make a few birds, and or anything you want to hang up, and but you want to you don't want to invest in all that. So what I'll do is I will show you the two techniques. I'll show you how I do it with the crimp bead. I'll also show you tying it. So let's get started with this. I'm going to put those two birds aside. We're going to concentrate on this bird. So I'm just going to cut enough wire, cord of what I think I need. You can see this bird, I have a longer, right? I pulled a longer piece, so it's going to hang a bit differently than this one. So if you're not 100% sure what you're going to do yet, what I would say is just cut more than you think you need. I do two ways. You can use scissors. So I'm just going to cut here with a pair of scissors. You could also use wire cutters. And I use the wire cutters when I do the crimp beads, just because, well, I'll show you. I'll show you when we get to that point. Okay, so I like to use needles that have a larger eye hole. So here you can see, this is the one. Wait, is this the one? Nope. This is the one that I use all the time. So you can see that it's got it's not super large, right? This one's like a lot bigger. The reason I like this one is, if you see my three needles together, it's the longest of the needles. So when it goes through the wool, right, I need it to come out the other side, right? So you do want something that's going to be long enough to get through there. These came with, years ago, I bought a bunch of sewing needles, like a huge set, and these were the needles in it. You could probably go to any fabric store and see they might sell larger needles like this. So you can see the other two have wider holes, but they're not quite as long in length. So that's why I tend to use this one. Okay, so then what I'm going to show you here is, I find with these birds, you can see where they come through on each bird is right behind the neck. And then I go straight through to the bottom. So I'm just going to thread my needle. Okay, there we go. And I pull it enough, like about here. What I find happens is, when I sew it through, a lot of times it'll bend the cord. So and to make sure that it doesn't like do too much, because again, I'm not sure how long of a cord I want, of a loop. Okay, so I know you're like, why don't you go down and come up? It's because I want the tie to be at the bottom and I want the loop to be at the top. So I'm going to say that, like, here is where I want to come in. So I'm just going to go straight through. First, I want to make sure it's in the center, and then I'm going to come straight through like this. And if I don't think it's going to be in the center enough, I will keep doing this until I get it to where I want it to be. But this looks like it's probably good enough. All right, so now I pull it through. Can you see how the wire got a bit bent? The cord. I keep calling it a wire. I'm used to using beading wire for stuff. right? So you can see how it bent that. So right now I'm just kind of looking to see to make sure it's come through. It looks good enough, and I want to come through almost to the exact same spot that I popped out at the top. So I gotta just rethread this. And now I'm gonna come through. Now, there could be a concern that this might pull through, so I usually leave enough out so that if I start to, when I start pulling like that, it's not going to, that's gonna go through, and then I'm gonna have to start all over again. Sometimes you could take like a clip. I have these it's like a clip that I've sometimes seen in offices where you clip a big stack of papers together. Like those work really well. You know, or you could just hold something heavy on top. I just put the scissors on it. Okay, so now I've got to look and see, and I'm just going to come through. I'm going to go a little bit over. I don't want to go through the same hole, but close. So now I'm going to come through, and now I want it to be close. See, that's not close. So I want it to be, this is a bit of a trick. You can see I keep coming through. I'm trying to get it as close as I can. There we go. So I don't know if you could see me when I was pushing it through. I did bring some tweezers over. Sometimes I find it a little easier to just pull it through with tweezers if you have a hard time gripping the needle. I can move the scissors out of the way. So now I'm holding my finger on the loop because I don't want to like pull the loop all the way down. I just want to make sure, right? Sometimes it gets all the way down and you're trying to get it back, get the loop back. Right. Okay, so at this point, now I can decide how long of a cord that I want. I'll probably, I mean, it's really hard to say. I guess if you know where you're hanging it, right? If you made like 3 of them and you're going to hang them in different levels, right? Like obviously you want one to be longer and one to be shorter. I typically would have mine about this long, maybe a little shorter. So I will just leave it at about this point. Okay, so first I'm going to show you tying. So I'm going to lay this down. I like the length. I don't want to worry about the length. So I'm going to hold it down like this, and I'm going to try not to pull too much from underneath. But I want to tie this very close to the body. Okay, I'm gonna zoom in for this. So hold on a sec here. I don't have like super fancy filming equipment like the professional movie makers and stuff, but okay, so hopefully you can see that a little better. Okay, so now I'm going to tie. I'm not going to pull it all the way through. I do have the scissors holding, and I can even put more things so that it doesn't pull. So I'm just going to give it a little tug, not a big one, right? I'm just a little tug. So what I find is I have to tie it at least twice. Well, I say at least twice. I tie it twice, right? So I'm going and creating another knot, and that would be nice, except I know that that's not going to hold. So I have to do a third tie. And I find sometimes it's better that if you've tied it twice in one direction, that you flip it around and then you loop it around the other direction. That'll give you a much stronger tie, right? And then flip it back again, and then you'll pull it tight. The reason I'm not doing that right now is because I'm going to show you the crimp bead way. Once I do that, right, then it's all done. So I hope you understand what I meant by that, is that I usually tie it 4 times. 3 is okay, 4 is better. You probably don't need to go 5. So again, I tie it twice, right? So I make 2 knots, and then I come in and I rotate it so that like when I do the tie, I maybe come in the other way. So what do I mean by that is, so like, well, I don't even remember. You remember when you were a kid and your parents were teaching you how to tie, and it's like, oh, you got the one comes around and it loops around, and then you it's kind of that same idea, is that if I'm taking this cord this side and I'm coming through the hole to make the knot, when I flip it over this way, I'm now taking this string and I'm doing that, right? I'm pulling it through. I really hope that made sense. Maybe I'll go look for a video and put it in the comments of someone showing how to tie shoes. Okay, so that's the way of tying. When you use a crimp bead, this is always the careful thing with the crimp beads, because they like to flop around a lot. So you have to get, what I usually do is I'll zoom in even more for this. Wow, here we go, we're getting super zoom. All right, so hopefully you can see this really well. Okay, so I'm trying to take the whole of my crimp bead, right, and get it onto, here we go, get it onto the wire, right? So there's a little hole in the crimp bead, and I let that, oops, I need to get both sides on there. So now I have to get, here, I'll hold it with the tweezers, maybe it'll be a little easier to see. Just don't squeeze too hard. So now I gotta get this side through the hole. Right, so you basically want to get both sides through the crimp bead and like get it through. And this is where I can readjust. A little easier to do with the crimp bead, right? So I'm just making sure it's where I want it to be. Then I take my wire cutter, or not wire cutter. Oh boy, huh. This is live, folks. Well, not live. I mean, I'm recording it, and I'm not. I'm doing my best. Okay, so I'm going to take my pliers. That's what it's called. And I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to squeeze. So I give it one squeeze, on the ends, right, just to make sure it's on there. And then I'll take it back further, and then I'll really give it a good squeeze. I even see both my hands and squeeze. Right, and now it's on, right? So now that's permanently on there. The only way I can get it off is to cut it off, right? So the reason I said I like to use, these are Fiskars. I mean, these would probably do the trick, but I like that the wire cutter has that tip at the end there, right? So so you can see the difference. This has got a, they're really good, but they're rounded on the end, where wire cutters have this nice, it's sharp all the way down. I'm gonna move some of this stuff out of the way. I keep all my my needles in a plastic baggie so that they don't fall. I don't lose them because I only have one. Okay, so in this case, now I can get very close to the crimp bead, and then I can squeeze it and cut it off, right? And then you just want to make sure you don't cut the wrong side or cut the crimp bead. And so that is how I get that on that way. So once I'm done stringing up the birds, I like to do the test where I hang them up to see if they are balanced correctly. So in this bird, this one's hung perfectly, and I strung it up, and it's hanging evenly in this direction, horizontally. And when I hold it up here, so here you can see, right, this way, and then I hold it this way, so when I'm done stringing up the bird, I like to hold it up and hang them, depending on how many I've made, and see how balanced they are. So in the case of this bird is hung perfectly. It hangs evenly. It doesn't sway like one side or the other, like it could be like this or this. It's strung right in the middle, so it's balanced that way. And it's got a really nice balance where it sits straight across, right? It's not like angling up or it's angling down. So this one has been strung up really well. This bird also is strung up well, side to side, like this way, horizontally. It is hanging perfectly. I'm noticing it's very slightly tilting a little bit over to my left side. So in that case, it's really not that noticeable, especially when it's hanging up side like on this like, horizontally. So if you're hanging it on a tree, if you're hanging it up, as a mobile or just on its own to sway in the breeze, it's not going to matter. And when it's spinning and everything, no one's really going to notice. When it came to the bird that I strung up in the video, they keep moving around. It's pointing up in this direction, which means that it's not balanced correctly. So what I would have to do is cut the nylon cord off and restring it. And based on what I'm seeing pointing up, I need to come back a bit further. I had it strung here. I need to bring it back maybe 1/4 of an inch back. I might need a little bit more. I could try a few times to string it up. I think once I did it this way, I'll have an easier, a better idea when I do it again. Sometimes you can clip something down at the bottom, and that could help you see how it's going to hang before you either tie it or use the crimp bead. But sometimes that weight could cause a misbalance. And even though, like maybe say there you said, oh, I hung them in the same place on 2 different birds, this bird feels a little heavier than this bird. It's possible I may have more wool up front, and that could cause a misbalance as well. So each bird's going to be individual. So I would say, just trial and error. Sometimes I get it right the first time. Sometimes I have to restring a few times to get it to hang properly. So there you go. There's my tips. So thank you for watching my video on how to make a simple bird. I certainly hope you didn't find this project too difficult. When I planned it, I thought it was going to be less steps, but I thought it would be a really good project, especially if you wanted to learn more about sculpting. So once you make all your hundreds of birds, I would definitely like to see them. So send me an email or a message. If you have any questions, definitely contact me. All my information is located in the description of the video and also on the last frame of the video. So again, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.